Hey, welcome to Stuff to Blow Your Mind Trailer Talk. My name is Robert Lamb.
And I'm Joe McCormick, and we're the hosts of the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast, a science podcast out of the How Stuff Works Network. This is not the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast. This is Trailer Talk, where we come on here to talk about movies related to recent episodes. Now, of course, we're going to have some vaguely holiday-themed episodes coming out in the next few weeks. So we thought, hey, why not talk about B-horror movies about Christmas?
Yeah, well, actually, I think we ended up having some far more Christmas themes this year than we at all anticipated.
Right.
It started with the World Tree episode, the Tree of Life episode that came out at the very tail end of November, which ended up getting into Christmas tree territory quite by accident. And then we have two more. One is coming up. One is a two-parter on the Winter People, about how sometimes humans change culturally and how we may even change physiologically in response to the winter.
And then I think we should not spoil this next one, but we also will have one about weird ideas in the history of science and reproduction and artistic representations of the baby Jesus.
Yes.
Let's not go any deeper than that.
Yeah, I think that one should be out next week, so that one will be out in time for Christmas.
Now, today we're going to be looking at B-horror movies about Christmas. I've been wondering, why are there so many Christmas horror movies? Halloween horror movies, that totally makes sense. But there are no Easter horror movies, 4th of July horror movies.
There may be a few 4th of July ones.
Oh, yeah, maybe?
But a handful, nothing compared to just the vast well of holiday horror films, which have been coming out for ages. We were trying to pinpoint, when did the holiday slasher thing begin? And it began, in 72, at least.
Well, yeah, you go back to the 70s and you've got, Home for the Holidays. It's like a made-for-TV horror movie about Christmas. You've got Black Christmas, directed by Bob Clark, who went on to direct A Christmas Story or The Christmas Story.
Oh, yeah.
What about Ralphie?
You'll
Wants
shoot
the
your
BB
eye out,
gun.
kid.
Yeah. So he later makes this beloved family Christmas comedy, but before that, he made a movie about Christmas time slashers stalking girls in a sorority house, murdering them. It's a really not good movie, but it does have a young Margot Kidder in it before she was in Superman.
Yeah, it's such an interesting area. I think you can basically nail it down to two main reasons here. First of all, it feels like a travesty, desecration to make a Christmas horror film, and that's what leads a lot of people to make them or to watch them.
They generally have a kind of perverse sense of humor.
Yeah.
They're as if intentionally designed to cross boundaries of bad taste.
Yeah, but it all kind of comes back to, it's a horror movie, but at Christmas, there's Santa Claus, but he's a killer. It's just this inversion of everything. But it does, I think, feed into this reaction a lot of us have, particularly to highly westernized, highly American Christmas, where you have, instead of having this symbolic journey through the cold of winter, instead of it being a celebration of what you hold dear so that you might stay warm and survive the cold, it's about, hey, here's a really exaggerated idea of how you should feel during December. Here's how happy you should be, how joyful. And we rebel to that, and we want to tear it down and put a slasher character in it.
Right. It's sort of a blasphemy against the forced happiness regime. But also there is the very easy, lazy consumerism satire element.
Yes.
I dare you to come up with maybe 3 horror movies that are Christmas horror movies that don't have a scene in a mall.
Yeah.
They all have a scene in a mall. Find one without a mall.
Yeah. It's part of it. It's part of what you're rebelling against in these films.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, and this is going to be kind of our starting point here today, you do have a lot of horror in Christmas. It's completely ridiculous to get too upset over the injection of horror into Christmas stories when most of these older winter traditions involve things like, Krampus or other various holiday goblins that do dastardly things like kidnap children or pee on holiday cookies.
Well, if you go back to the old stories of St. Nicholas before he was associated with the Father Christmas archetype, St. Nicholas, he has all these bizarre stories about his life where there are tales that he resurrected chopped up pickled children who'd been murdered and then pickled, and he brings them back. But you don't come back from being pickled, do you? Even if you're back to life, you're not the same.
I imagine him looking like Pickle Rick from Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Like little pickle people running around. That's a Christmas tradition to really kickstart again, I think.
So we are going to be, before I guess we look at a couple of B horror movies about Christmas, we should look at some scary but more traditionally reverent ideas about what the Christmas tradition can be. And I would argue that a lot of our Western traditional ideas about Christmas come pretty much directly from Charles Dickens and A Christmas Carol.
Yeah, and it is at least the number 3 Christmas story out there. I mean, because it's the only Christmas story, the top Christmas story that comes to mind that doesn't have Jesus in it, doesn't have Santa.
Right.
And it's loaded with ghosts.
It's sort of, the Ghost of Christmas Present is kind of a Father Christmas character.
Well, true, yeah.
But not Santa.
But not full-on Santa.
Right.
And then you just have a bunch of ghosts and even worse creatures, depending on the adaptation.
So what is the scariest adaptation of A Christmas Carol that really plays up the horror the best?
For my money, and this is not, I don't know if anyone's ever done like a true horror send-up of A Christmas Carol. I'm sure it would be very hokey. But I have always been very partial to the 1970 musical film Scrooge, in which Albert Finney plays Scrooge and is marvelous. And
he does a lot of whimpering and kind of
sounds, yeah. And then the always marvelous Alec Guinness plays Marley's ghost.
Now, Marley in this movie has this wonderfully devious sense of humor. A lot of times in adaptations of A Christmas Carol, Marley's ghost is just this sour, sad, kind of grumpy guy. He does come back to warn Scrooge, but you never see Marley smile or anything.
Right.
Occasionally there's some that work it in, but this one really plays it up. Marley's just having a great time twisting the knife in Scrooge with all of the bad things that are going to happen to him.
Yeah, he's a bit sardonic, and I love it. He has a wonderful laugh in this growly, raspy voice, Scrooge. Yeah.
He kind of sings a song, but he doesn't really sing.
Yeah, he just kind of speaks it. It's wonderful. And I have to say, I'm not a huge musical fan, but this has some wonderful songs in it.
Are you going to sing one?
Oh, well, there's I Hate People that Scrooge sings, where he says, I hate people, people are despicable creatures. It's got Thank You Very Much, the Thank You Very Much, Thank You Very Much, that's the nicest thing that anyone's ever done for me. Yeah,
it's a nice chimney sweep accent.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, there's lots of, it's just steeped in Cockney accents. It's marvelous. But some of these scenes we're seeing here behind us are among my favorite parts.
This is supposed to be hell, right?
Yes, they go to hell.
Yeah, so this is after Scrooge has had his encounter with the ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, and he falls into his grave, and then Marley shows him to his room in hell.
Yes. Yeah, and then they begin to roll out the chains he forged in life, the ones that he alludes to earlier. That they're forging such a chain for you, Ebenezer, in hell. Just wait till you see it. And so we have some greasy muscle men with dark hoods beginning to roll them in the sequence. This
is a great vision of hell to fit the story, though, because what it says about Scrooge. Now, traditionally, I think in Victorian culture, you'd have more depictions of hell that were hot. But, well, actually, I don't know if that's the case. I assume that's the case, the more modern hot hell.
Yeah.
But in this one, he's got a cold hell, which fits Scrooge, because in A Christmas Carol, Dickens says that Scrooge is, hard and cold, as solitary as an oyster. He uses all this imagery of being this kind of cold, separate, solitary, freezing creature.
Yeah, it's more Dante-esque, too.
Yeah.
Where, I guess in Dante's Inferno, the very lower limits of hell are a frozen lake, the Lake of Cocytus, I believe.
And here we've got the workers from the forges of hell bringing in Scrooge's giant chain.
Yeah. So this is it's a little bit silly, but it's a horrifying sequence. We are in hell. We're at the bottom of the universe in this film.
It looks like a Dario Argento movie.
Yeah.
It's got that kind of mood lighting. Yeah.
And the ghosts that we were seeing earlier are equally, if not more, repulsive. You get all these close-ups of these rotting skulls. So yeah, I think Scrooge, A Christmas Carol, all of these various interpretations remind us that there is a horror that is essential to the holidays.
Now, picking up on the comparison I just made, can you imagine a great Italian, giallo version of A Christmas Carol?
That would be good.
What would the Argento Christmas Carol be like?
Well, I guess Scrooge is the kid. They tend to not be that complex, is the thing.
I guess that's true.
So it's just which one is going to be the kid? Tiny Tim was the killer the whole time. That's got to be the twist.
Right, yeah. And he was actually an orangutan in a human suit.
Or I wonder if anyone's ever done a pro-Scrooge adaptation where they twist everything and have like a real hard-line conservative message where
the world is terrible and Scrooge is the only person who's right.
Yeah, and that he's making all the right business decisions, and it's right to put people below the demands of business.
Ayn Rand's A Christmas Carol.
Well, there's time yet, because Lord knows we're never going to stop adapting A Christmas Carol.
Well, should we take a look? Actually, before we look at our first B-horror movie about Christmas, we should remind you, if you've just recently tuned in, that we are the hosts of the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast, a science podcast out of the How Stuff Works network. This is not the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast. This is Trailer Talk, where we come on here and talk about some of our favorite movies, often bad movies, that relate to episodes we've got coming up or that have recently come out. We've got some holiday episodes on the way. So stay tuned for those, and if you don't already listen, go to where you get your podcasts and subscribe to Stuff to Blow Your Mind. But is it time to look at a really gross, vile Christmas horror movie?
I believe it is. This is one I was not familiar with until you introduced it to me. You even own a copy of it.
This is Elves, 1989, starring Dan Haggerty. What is the best way to introduce this movie? Should we read what's written on the back of the box?
Yes, let's read the back of the box.
Okay. A dramatic reading. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the town, bloodthirsty elves are about to get down. An innocent romp in the woods turns into a hellish nightmare when 3 young girls accidentally awaken an army of evil elves, genetically created by a neo-Nazi mad scientist during World War II.
Okay.
That is what it says. I think there's a little bit of confusion about the terminology there. These hideous creatures don't work for Santa. They have a special mission: to mate with a virgin and take over the world as a pint-sized master race. Dan Haggerty of Grizzly Adams stars as Mike McGavin, a department store Santa who must expose this unholy force and stop the gruesome terror before the elves destroy Christmas.
Yes, and Dan Haggerty is great in this. You know, he's got that Grizzly Adams laid back kind of charm. And I will, if I'm going to say one other nice thing about the film, I'll say that it at least is authentically Christmassy. One of the other film we're going to talk about later on, it's a case where clearly they had an idea and then they decided to Christmas it up in order to market it as a Christmas horror film. This one has Christmas in its DNA. You
often in bad B-horror movies get the feeling that there's been a script rewrite to fit something into a genre or fit something into either a subgenre or an existing franchise.
Right.
So, I think this is the case with some Hellraiser sequels. They just took this random horror spec script and they're like, oh, we can put a Pinhead in there, make it a Hellraiser movie. I think some Christmas horror movies are like that too. It's like, oh, here's a monster movie. Oh, maybe we can Christmas this up a bit.
Now, that's not to say that this movie is high art by any means, but they clearly said, all right, what do we got? Christmas. All right, elves, virgin. Let's throw a virgin in there. Santa, we got to have a Santa. Let's have multiple Santas, actually.
I would say this movie is profound in its aggressive violation of good taste.
Yes, it is a sleazy movie.
It is sleazy, gross. I don't know if I actually recommend it for fans of bad movies. It does have goobery-looking monsters. It does have some really pricelessly bad dialogue. It's also just gross. It checks all the boxes for uncomfortable subject matter. It's got lots of incest, Nazi eugenics programs through monsters, but then also Christmas. And so just put the Christmas twist on all of the worst themes you can imagine.
Yeah, and it definitely has those ham-fisted moments where there's some commentary about the over-commercialization of Christmas.
Yeah, like what?
Oh, well, there are a lot of scenes in a mall because the plot concerns
what
mall
do you
Santas.
Know? Yeah, back to the mall.
Yeah, well, there's a scene where a terrible mall Santa who's doing lines of coke, basically sexually assaulting women, and then an elf comes around and just stabs him to death in the groin. A lot of groin violence. And then Dan Haggerty has to step up and replace him as the mall Santa, and luckily Haggerty has the charm and the wit to pull it off here.
Oh, man. So the director of this film, I looked him up to see what else he'd done, is a guy named Jeffrey Mandel. Other Jeff Mandel credits include a movie called Cyber Chick from 1990. Quote, a cybernetic agent is assigned to break up a drug smuggling ring. I don't know if we have images from Cyber Chick.
That sounds pretty solid, though.
Yeah, it's actually like Cyber-CHIC with a period, so it's obviously an acronym, but I don't know what that stands for.
The Cybernetic Humanoid Interrogation Coven? That's my...
Not bad.
Not bad, yeah.
Except if only we had a coven. That seems like that would make that a little more thematically interesting. But no, it's like we had this spate in the late 80s and early 90s of cyborg movies. There's endless parade of movies about a person wearing leather with like a thing over their eye that they can go in to do the Terminator thing and zoom in on people with lasers. But yeah, so he made that, and then not much else. He was one of the writers of Firehead.
Okay, didn't see that one.
TV series called Superforce. In the year 2020, an astronaut becomes a vigilante when he returns from a mission to learn his cop brother's been murdered.
Everybody loves a good story about an astronaut who's come back from the space adventures to do something mundane.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, what? Oh, is this it? Yeah, here we go. Cyber Chick.
Oh. Cyber Chick herself.
Jeff Mandel obviously had a lot of ideas. You know, somebody with a wealth of creativity to offer the world, and it didn't necessarily pan out for his filmmaking career. But yeah, so we have the legacy of Elves and Cyber Chick.
Now, I will say that one of the screenwriters on this, Bruce A. Taylor, he went on to better things, including writing for a lot of TV projects and film projects, including 2007's The Brave One, starring Jodie Foster.
Wow, so there's like a 1 degree of separation between Jodie Foster and Elves.
Yeah, like Jodie Foster, Neil Jordan, a whole classy lot, and then there's this film right next to it.
So if you're ever playing the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game or whatever, and you need to get from Dan Haggerty to Jodie Foster, Elves is your ticket.
That's it, yeah. Oh man, there's a lot to say about this film. There's a cat in it called Agamemnon.
Yeah.
Which really, I think, classes the movie up for a few moments until somebody drowns the cat in a toilet.
Yep.
And then you're like, all right, all bets are off with this one. All we have is Haggerty.
Should we quote some quotes from the movie?
Yes.
We now convene the Sisters of Anti-Christmas.
Yes, that's early on too. Not sisterhood, mind you, but just sisters.
It's like we must calculate the anti-Christmas equation.
Yeah, and then there's a great one too. I believe this quote comes from like an historian or librarian character who pops up. When there's no more... No, it's a Nazi. I'm sorry.
Right.
It's a Nazi that says this. The one that looks like Sebastian Gorka, I think.
Right.
He says, when there's no more room in hell, the elves shall walk the earth.
I think that's obviously a quote from Dawn of the Dead, where the dead shall walk the earth. There's a creepy old Nazi grandpa in this movie who's obsessed with elves, and there are scenes of like his family chewing him out because he won't stop talking about elves. Like, don't start that again. You and your elves. I'm sick of it.
Yeah, there's a line. He can't arrest us. He's a Santa. Or no, he's Santa. Not even a Santa.
Right.
He's Santa. This is one of those bad movies where you shouldn't watch it on mute because the lines are just so wonderful. There's so much just awful dialogue. Particularly, well, with everybody but Haggerty, because Haggerty makes the lines work. He alone in this film has the charm,
got the star power,
and the star power to pull it off. Though at times he seems to have sort of like he's almost irritated by what's going on with the elves, which is kind of your experience with the film. You're almost reaching the point of irritation with the movie.
Well, the way they've got Dan Haggerty in this movie is he's a noir detective character. So he's exasperated, he's emotionally detached, he's hard drinking, hard smoking, cynical, wisecracking kind of guy.
He is literally a former detective turned mall Santa.
Oh, here we got him.
Yeah, there he is, as
Dan
Grizzly
Haggerty.
Adams. Yeah.
If only there were some bears in this movie. I don't think there are.
I don't think they had it in the budget. Only had money for elves.
Do we have any comments coming in? Any questions? Anything to address?
Well, Catherine says she's currently watching you guys silently while she's listening to Present Moment number 2, and she says it almost sinks.
Whoa.
Weird.
Crazy. Well, we were talking about the ghost of Christmas past and present and future. It kind of ties into our recent episodes about the nature of time and whether the present moment actually exists.
Yeah, it sounds like you've released the ghosts of time within time. Anything else? Comments?
There's a certain person named Jonathan Strickland.
Ah.
Who says that Scrooge is his favorite adaptation of this story.
Oh, man. Awesome.
Jonathan's...
And the song, Thank You Very Much, is simultaneously dark and peppy.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sure he would like to come in here and sing it right now. Jonathan, shout out to Jonathan Strickland, the host of Tech Stuff here in the office. If you're not a listener, you should check out Tech Stuff. Jonathan says he loves Scrooge as well.
Well, the song he mentions, Thank You Very Much, is performed, if I'm remembering correctly, by Bob Cratchit. Or is it, I think it's performed by Bob Cratchit often while standing on the casket of Scrooge.
Yeah.
Jonathan can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe it's Cratchit who performs that one.
Okay, are we ready to go on to our next bad Christmas movie?
Yes. And
So, is this one going to be in better taste or worse taste than Elves?
oh, well, it almost kind of has to be in better taste.
Yeah, it's hard to get worse than, like, Nazi elves and incest.
But it's still kind of a trashy film. I mean, for starters, it is an entry in the Silent Night, Deadly Night series, which is kind of the creme de la creme of trashy Christmas horror films.
Mm-hmm.
It's a series that I never watched any of these films growing up, but I remember seeing the VHS box art in stores. I seeing the promotional material, and I had just a real visceral reaction to it. Like, I loved Christmas as a kid. I liked scary things, but this just felt like a violation.
I feel like there's a really great long New Yorker article waiting to be written about the experience of being a child in the 80s and 90s and walking through the horror section of VHS-packed video stores.
Yeah.
I did this when I was a kid. I know you've talked about doing this when you were a kid. It's such a unique experience that really sticks in my mind. It's like one of my most vivid memories from childhood. I guess that's kind of a sad thing to say.
No,
it's like walking
I
around
feel the same way.
and seeing the VHS box art for Jason Goes to Hell and I Spit on Your Grave and Silent Night, Deadly Night, which what I remember is it was not like one of those flat cardboard boxes, but it was like the big puffy clamshell plastic box.
Oh, yeah.
And like the Disney movies were packed in. And the image was just a chimney with a like Santa arm in a red Santa suit coming out holding an axe outside the chimney.
Yeah, it was. There it is right here. This was disturbing. So, in the Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise, the first 3 films are
amazing.
slasher.
No. No.
Well, they're slashers. They all have to have a killer Santa, a slasher Santa, guy in a Santa suit going around killing people. That's the basic premise. But by the time they reached Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 and 5, they decided to spin it off in a different direction, to go a little Halloween 3 on everything, and treat it more as an anthology of horror films set during Christmas.
Now, once you say Halloween 3, I'm on board.
Yeah, well, and there is a lot of Halloween 3, I think, in the film we're talking about here today. So just to give you the timeline, the 4th movie came out, and it was directed by Brian Yuzna, who I imagine a number of you are familiar with. He worked a lot with Stuart Gordon.
Reanimator movies.
Yeah, Reanimator movies, Society, a lot of like icky, sticky body horror movies, generally with fabulous makeup effects created by Screaming Mad George. And Screaming Mad George definitely worked in the movie we're talking about here, which is Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, The Toy Maker.
Who is the Toy Maker?
Well, it's Mickey Rooney, of course.
That's not a joke. This movie stars Mickey Rooney.
Mickey Rooney, who had written a letter of protest when the first Silent Night, Deadly Night movie came out about how this was just a travesty and all. So, of course, they hired him for the 5th one to play the evil toy maker. And Joe, share his name with the viewers here.
Oh, his name, the toy maker in this movie is Geppetto. Any fans of Pinocchio out there might notice a little illusion, maybe?
Yeah, he has what seems at first to be a son named Pino, who, of course, turns out to be a Pinocchio character.
Right.
Yes, we have a Geppetto Pinocchio horror film with just mild wrappings of the holidays around it.
Yeah, I mean, there are Christmas trees, and people do get killed by Christmas presents, but I would say what this movie mostly is a direct ripoff of the Puppet Master films. The first Puppet Master movie came out a couple years before this, and to be clear, Puppet Master, once you're ripping off Puppet Master, you have set your ambitions very low in life. But Puppet Master movies, the first one was in '89, I think, and they're just about like puppets that each have some inventive way of killing people. So one's got like a switchblade, and one has just big beefy arms and crushes people, I guess. And another one spits leeches on people.
Yeah. It's
And this movie's like that. So to continue, it is implied. We won't spoil the ending, or maybe we will. I don't know. But
we might as well spoil it.
It is implied throughout the film that that Mickey Rooney's character, who is this toy maker, Geppetto, makes toys that kill people. So they're like little robots that come into your house, and then they come out with some buzz saws and stab you, or they latch themselves to your face and make you fall over on stuff. I don't really know how that one works.
Yeah, there's one called Larry the Larva that is in a package. It's like a pink box. Larry the Larva, this kind of cartoon-looking. It's not even a larva. It looks like some sort of a weird sci-fi intestinal bug.
Yeah.
And it like bores through people's faces.
Clearly a ripoff of the Leech Lady character from the Puppet Master movies, but without the lady. It's Leech Lady, just the leech.
So we set up the whole Pinocchio Geppetto situation. So yeah, it turns out that his son, Pino, is an android, is a robot that Geppetto made. There are all these fabulous scenes. Again, the makeup by Screaming Mad George. So it's the makeup and the effects are impeccable. But it takes his face off, and there's just this empty hole with like electricity sparking through it.
Yeah.
And then the twist.
Right. The twist is halfway through the movie. So in the end, you believe Mickey Rooney's character is dressing up as Santa and killing people with these killer toys. In fact, Mickey Rooney has been murdered part of the way through the movie, and is being replaced by a robot that looks like him, being controlled by his son, Pino.
Yes.
Pinocchio becomes the master.
Yes. Yeah, and it's some creepy stuff. Let's see, what else did I want to say about this one? The twist is pretty solid. Oh, Mickey Rooney is also a fabulous makeup special effect in this, just by being Mickey Rooney.
True.
You might not
the creature effects. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, he has this like squat little goblin physique going on.
There are great
big
scenes
teeth
where he's chewing people out and slamming Jack Daniels. Oh yeah, here we go.
There he is.
Oh
The
yeah,
master
there he
at
goes. That's his job now.
Yeah. So it's hard to recommend this film. It's actually reasonably difficult to find a streaming version of it.
Oh, I forgot to mention Clint Howard alert.
Oh yes, Clint Howard is in both Silent Night, Deadly Night 4 and 5, seemingly playing the same character.
Just a bit role in this one, but he shows up as a character playing a department store Santa Claus, which is apparently a trope that these Christmas horror movies just can't get past. So both of the two movies we mentioned, Elves and Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, both have scenes where a department store Santa Claus complains about being urinated on.
Which I guess is an occupational hazard.
Yeah.
Well, if there are any Santas out there, let us know.
If we think it's a derivative work, though, we must note that Elves came first.
It's true. It's true. All right. Well, do we have a guest?
Well, I heard. Hi, everybody.
Jonathan Strickland, everybody.
I heard you were talking about my favorite adaptation of A Christmas Carol.
Oh, cool.
With Scrooge earlier, and I was invited to come on and to duet because I heard you were singing my favorite song from that.
Oh no!
Well, you may know the lyrics better than I do. I kind of have to cobble the various
That's fair.
lyrics
fair.
together into one one stream of consciousness.
Yeah, no, it's no. I was going to say that "Thank You Very
This
Much"
might happen.
is my favorite song from that film, and the reason being is because it has that great juxtaposition of being a happy, peppy tune, but with super dark undertones.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of the song is that the characters are singing how happy they are. They're thanking Scrooge for, spoiler alert, dying.
Right.
And so the subtext there is that they're saying, hey, thanks for kicking the bucket.
Right.
And but
Casting
the song,
lots for his garments.
exactly. But the whole song's done in that sort of chipper chimney sweep style.
Yeah.
And that was so I was just. But yeah, it was the whole. That's why I was like, I was ready to go. But
Well, let's do it. Let's. I think we're ready to close
We
out.
can't
here.
do the whole song. Can
No,
we?
but we
we'll
can.
just do a
We'll
little
just
bit.
start singing, and then Ramsey will cut us off.
Cut us off
before
when
it
it's
gets too much.
time.
I really only remember it from the second verse, which is "Thank you very much." Thank you very much. That's the nicest thing that anyone's ever done for me. I know it's quite bizarre, but things the way they are, I feel as if a new life has begun for me. And if I had a cannon, I would fire it to add a sort of celebration touch. But since I left the cannon at home, I simply have to say thank you very, very, very much. Yeah, there we go.
There we go. All
Thanks,
right,
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheerio.